when I discovered my mother had secretly siphoned thousands from my personal savings, bankroll for my entitled sister's over-the-top wedding that I never approved. I froze the account just days before the ceremony and watched their lavish plans implode in public humiliation, proving I won't let anyone exploit my hard-earned money. I'm navigating a rather unusual life situation, not quite a problem, but more of a predicament. My mother and sister have relied on me financially for many years, and their demands have escalated beyond reasonable bounds. I feel a strong pull to disconnect from them, yet that would likely plunge them into financial hardship, which feels quite severe. However, I've also reached my limit with their constant requests. I'm a 38-year-old woman, married with 2 children, and I've resided in Ohio for the past 6 years since my wedding. My roots are in Houston. My childhood was difficult, marked by my parents' separation and my father's departure, driven by his accusations of my mother's infidelity. To this day, it's unclear if these were mere allegations or based in truth, especially as my mother never remarried. I was 10 and my sister 5 when our parents parted ways. The story goes that my father doubted my sister's paternity, leading to the divorce. As part of the settlement, he allowed my mother to keep the house, and he moved out. My father covered my educational expenses, but not my sister's. He didn't provide child support for her, and I'm unsure why my mother never challenged this. I suppose this is why many believed my father's claims about my sister not being his biological child. For much of my childhood, my father wasn't consistently present. He'd occasionally appear at my school to pay fees and bring me gifts. But once I entered high school, I reached out to him, and from then on, he was a consistent part of my life. He even attended my wedding, despite significant disapproval from my mother. Over time, I developed a stronger bond with my father than with my mother. He even visited me in Ohio twice after I settled here. Sadly, this closeness was cut short when he was diagnosed with a terminal illness, and we lost him last year. My mother disliked my close relationship with my father, and she grew distant towards me. Adding to her anger, my father designated me as his heir. He had remarried many years after divorcing my mother, but had no children from his second marriage. He often said he had only one daughter, and that was me. It's no surprise that my mother and sister resented me for my father's affection and my inheritance of his $400,000 trust fund. This wasn't just about the inheritance. Throughout my childhood, my father funded my education. Consequently, I attended better schools and a superior college than my sister, leading to a generally more comfortable life, thanks to the child support funds. When my parents divorced, I was 10, and by the time I was 12, the child support and education money began arriving. My mother had limited control over it. Educational fees went directly to the schools and college. My mother did allocate a portion of the child support money towards my sister and household expenses. Since I wasn't a naive child, my mother ensured I was content, so I wouldn't voice any complaints. So, I wouldn't describe my mother and sister as malicious during my upbringing, but they certainly didn't seem to favor me. They were quite close, while I often felt like an outsider. Furthermore, I was intelligent, not just academically, but also astute as a child, not someone to be easily manipulated or walked over. I believe this was another reason my mother could never truly mistreat me. My current predicament revolves around that $400,000 inheritance from my father. Ever since my mother and sister discovered this, they've been constantly hounding me for loans for various reasons. In fairness, this isn't the first time they've sought financial assistance from me. Since I began working, I've consistently helped them, and as my income grew, so did their financial demands. I don't technically owe them anything, but I feel compelled to assist them because they're family and earn considerably less. My mother works as a supermarket cashier, and my sister is in sales at a boutique. Their combined income is less than half of mine, which makes me feel obligated to help. While our emotional connection might not be strong, they've never been overtly cruel or malicious towards me. I hope this clarifies my feelings and doesn't create confusion. A few months ago, my mother contacted me, expressing her desire to renovate our house. The walls, ceilings, and floor had deteriorated over the years. Since my father moved out, the house had never been repainted, and the wiring hadn't been repaired. Corners of the ceilings and walls were crumbling. She explained they never had sufficient funds for maintenance, and that living there was becoming difficult, especially during thunderstorms or heavy rains, when it felt like the house might collapse. She mentioned visiting the bank for a loan, but finding the interest rates prohibitively high. I understood her subtle hint. She wanted me to fund the house renovations. It was an awkward conversation, as I knew what she wanted, yet neither of us directly addressed it. Following that call, I started avoiding her calls. She doesn't usually call frequently, never more than once a month, but this time, she called at least 3 or 4 times last month. Finally, when I answered, she reiterated that the house was becoming unsafe and literally falling apart in bad weather. This time, she was direct, asking for the money and promising to repay me in installments. I asked her how much she needed. She said $100,000. I was stunned. I told her I didn't have that much to lend. She then alluded to my inheritance. I was furious, but refrained from discussing the trust fund further. I stated that $50,000 was my absolute maximum. She agreed. Later, I realized I had been too rash. In offering $50,000, I could have simply ignored the request. But now that I had committed, I felt bound to lend her the money. I didn't feel good about lending such a significant sum. My husband suggested I disburse the money in installments and monitor the renovation progress before releasing subsequent payments. I informed my mother that I'd send the $50,000 in stages. I reactivated an old Houston bank account, transferred $10,000 into it, and gave my mother access. She asked why I wasn't transferring the money directly to her account. I offered a flimsy excuse for this. It was actually my husband's idea. Let's see how this works out. I've lost hope she'll return the money, though I'm not entirely optimistic, but we'll see. Update 1. I can't quite pinpoint how my mother and sister intended to deceive me for easy money. It's been 2 months since I began lending my mother money for the house renovation. I've given $20,000 so far, and I won't give another penny. I knew they were only pleasant to me for my money, but I never imagined they would lie so profoundly to extract funds from me. If they had been forthright, it wouldn't have stung as much. Recently, I learned about my sister's wedding, not from my family, but from a school friend. My friend's husband is a wedding planner, and my sister has been working with his agency to plan her elaborate wedding. That's what they're calling it. I don't think my sister knew I was friends with them. Of course, a wedding costing $50,000 is certainly extravagant. It's disheartening to hear about your sister's wedding from others, let alone not even receiving an invitation. I initially thought it would be a small, intimate gathering, but my friend mentioned the guest list was around 100. It was truly heartbreaking that I didn't even make it onto that list. Feeling sad was one thing, but I was more concerned about the money. Where did she get the funds to organize such a lavish wedding? One of the best venues in town, unlimited food and drinks, top-tier decorations and flowers. I checked the bank account where I'd been sending money to my mother for her supposed renovation work. It was empty. I called my mother to ask if the renovation had begun. She said yes, she'd hired the renovation company, but the work hadn't actually started. I couldn't bear her lies. At that point, I didn't have concrete proof they were using my money for the wedding, yet it disgusted me to think they were spending huge sums on her wedding while simultaneously taking money from me for house repairs. For a moment, I wanted to fly to Houston and see for myself what was happening, but I realized it wasn't worth it. I contacted my aunt, my father's sister, who lives a few blocks from my mother's house. I asked her if she knew about my sister's wedding. She confirmed it, but said she wasn't invited either. My mother isn't fond of my father's side of the family, so this was understandable. My aunt added that my sister's wedding had become the talk of the neighborhood. I mean, just a few years ago, their house was crumbling due to lack of maintenance, and they were both working tirelessly just to put food on the table. Now, they have a sparkling new house and a grand wedding. I felt dizzy and disoriented hearing this. My mother had claimed the house was still awaiting repairs, but my aunt said it was gleaming with new paint. Then I recalled that about 6 months prior, my mother had asked me for $20,000 for a knee transplant. I called my mother again, asking for details about where she had the knee transplant. I lied, saying a friend needed orthopedic information for her father's knee surgery. My mother fumbled for words, claiming she couldn't remember the name. I pressed her for hospital or clinic details, but she struggled to provide anything. She was clearly caught off guard. She simply pretended to have a network issue and hung up. When I called her again, her phone was switched off for a while, and then it went unanswered. I also sent her a text, but it remained unread for days. I understood she was lying. The money I gave her for the transplant had been used for the house renovation, and the money she was requesting for renovations was actually going towards my sister's fairy tale wedding. My aunt also mentioned that my sister's engagement was held on the front lawn of my mother's house, which they decorated with lilies, and wine was flowing freely. I felt as if I had been living in a cave, completely unaware that they were leading such a lavish lifestyle while pretending to be impoverished to extract money from me. So, my next step was to cut them off. I stopped depositing money into that account. When my mother called, I didn't answer. I didn't reply to her texts. My sister, who had never called me in all these years, called as well, but I didn't respond to her either. I'm through with their lies and manipulation. It doesn't matter that I earn more than them, or that my father left me an inheritance and nothing for them. That doesn't give them the right to leech off me and exploit me with their deceptive tactics. I vowed to disrupt my mother's princess's big day. Update 2. I was absolutely correct about my mother. When I stopped responding to their attempts to reach me, my mother called my husband. I must tell you, my husband can be quite the spoiler. I had given him a heads up not to entertain any of their calls or texts, but he still answered when my mother called. She started crying, claiming I had ghosted them, that they needed the money for the renovation work, and that the work was halfway done, and I had reneged on my promise. My husband blurted out the truth. Yes, he did that. I felt like smacking him. He told her I knew the truth, that she had been using me for money all along, and that the funds were actually going to my sister's wedding, which was why I had cut them off. I was so irritated by this because I wanted them to suffer for their deceit, but my husband ruined everything. He also told her we knew she had lied about the knee transplant and used that money for house repairs. After that call, my mother deluged my phone with apologies. She claimed it was a misunderstanding, that she had borrowed money from someone for the house repair and was now repaying that person with my money. It was another fabrication. After her continuous calls and messages, I told her I would speak with her only if she promised to tell me the truth. She agreed. I called her, and she revealed everything. She said my sister wanted an extravagant wedding, but they lacked the funds to pull it off. So, they decided to ask me for the money. It was my sister's idea to take the money from me under the guise of house renovation. They knew I hadn't visited Houston in many years and wasn't in touch with anyone there, so there was no way I would know the house was already renovated. I asked her why she didn't just tell me the truth and ask for the money directly for the wedding. She said my sister didn't want that. She didn't want to directly owe me a favor. Wow, can you believe that? I then said I knew she repaired the house with the knee transplant money I gave her. She went silent. I reiterated that I knew all the truth, so there was no point in hiding. She said the house was crumbling and my sister's in-laws wanted to visit, so they had to get it repaired quickly. In their haste, they couldn't come up with a better emergency reason to get the money from me, so she panicked and called me, saying the doctor had asked for an urgent knee transplant, and I transferred the money within hours. Although I remained strong on the call, I was crying internally, heartbroken by how my own mother was deceiving me for her own benefit. I understand they have financial difficulties, but that doesn't give them the right to manipulate me and extort money using emotional appeals. After hearing the entire truth, I hung up and cried for hours. I don't remember the last time I cried so intensely, perhaps when my father passed away. I missed him so badly that day. I felt he was the only one who genuinely loved and cared for me. 2 days later, I received a voicemail from my mother saying, "Now that you know, can you please send the remaining amount so we can continue with the wedding preparations?" It disgusted me so much that I wanted to lash out at her if she wasn't my mother. How could she be so self-absorbed? There was no remorse in her tone. All she wanted was money. They hadn't even asked me to come to the wedding, not even for appearances. Now that the truth was out, I felt so frustrated that I blocked both of them. I've also warned my husband not to entertain their calls, and if he disobeys me this time, he'll be sleeping outside on the porch in the cold night. I'm absolutely serious about this. I'm in constant contact with my aunt, and she told me the wedding is next month. I haven't shared the details about the money with her, but I know for sure that with each passing day, my mother and sister are struggling to put together the wedding they had envisioned. Good for them. Update 3. I continued to receive calls and voicemails from my mother and sister up until the wedding day, asking for money. But I stood my ground and didn't give in. On the wedding day, the last voicemail my mother sent was, that she was ashamed of me and was disowning me, and that I should never call her mom or visit her again. I was so disheartened to hear that. I cried my heart out in front of my husband. I know people might call me malicious and stubborn for ruining my sister's wedding. My mother also accused me of that, calling me arrogant and self-centered. But she never considered her own deceptions. She misled me all this time. I helped them because I felt obliged. I considered them family. But to them, I was nothing more than a source of income. On the day of the wedding, I also received a call from my friend, whose husband was my sister's wedding planner. She informed me that the wedding was likely to be canceled because they weren't paying the next installment of the wedding expenses. I asked her how much they had paid. She said $20,000. I replied that $20,000 was enough for a decent wedding. She confirmed, but explained my sister had ordered top-tier decorations and food, and the finalized venue alone cost around $20,000. She asked if I was attending. I said no. I had other commitments and couldn't make it. My friend knew I wasn't, particularly close to my mother and sister. Honestly, I was inwardly brooding because I felt responsible for ruining my sister's wedding. For a moment, I considered transferring the remaining amount to my friend and asking her to proceed with the wedding as planned. Then I remembered my mother's last voicemail, disowning me. What's the point of doing so much for them when ultimately you're disowned? My actions might seem harsh, but they were a reaction to their malicious provocations. I switched off my phone and spent the day out with my kids to distract myself. The next day, my friend called me again. She was angry with my sister because the wedding had damaged her husband's reputation in the market. On the wedding day, my mother and sister pleaded with her husband to arrange something bare minimum for the wedding and promised to pay an additional $10,000. He managed to arrange decent food and decorations because the $20,000 advance had almost entirely covered the venue itself. However, the guests and the groom's family severely criticized the wedding arrangements, and my sister blamed everything on the wedding planner. She told everyone the planner had messed everything up. My friend said her husband was so enraged that he wanted to tell everyone the truth, but my mother pleaded with him not to ruin my sister's life. He was a decent man, and he remained silent, accepted the blame, and let the wedding happen. On top of that, they hadn't even paid the promised $10,000 yet. I felt so embarrassed hearing this about my family. I simply remained silent and didn't say anything. My friend said she wasn't blaming me for anything, but she was just sharing her frustration with me as a friend. I felt bad that my family had to endure such embarrassment, but I was also ashamed of how they had placed all the blame on the wedding planner. After learning all this, my husband said they got what they deserved, and I shouldn't worry too much about them. They brought this upon themselves by trying to impress everyone through deceptive means. I'm glad I'm staying away from them and their schemes now. I feel my mother's disowning was a blessing in disguise, as I no longer have to deal with their lies and manipulative tactics. Story 2. A confession and a crossroads. My husband finally admitted he's in love with my sister after years of unspoken suspicion. He confessed it to me yesterday in a drunken state. I'm unsure whether to take it seriously or dismiss it as just alcohol-induced ramblings. Last night, we had dinner with my sister and her husband, and we all had quite a bit to drink. After my sister and her husband departed, my husband and I had sex. Neither of us was tired, so we continued sipping wine with music playing softly in the background, and everything felt wonderful. I thought my husband was happy and in a good mood. He's always like that when he's had a few drinks. We were talking about my sister and her husband when he suddenly blurted out, "I'm so in love with sister's name." I asked what. He repeated, "I'm so desperately in love with sister's name. What I wouldn't do to taste her lips. She's brilliant." He looked dreamy and was still smiling. I asked, "How drunk are you?" He responded, "Probably quite a bit." I was also tipsy, but his words hit me like a ton of bricks. I just sat there in silence, and he remained in his own world, a smile etched on his face, looking a million miles away. I went to bed, and this morning, all the memories flooded back. Now that I'm sober, what he said impacts me even more deeply. I'm horrified, and my heart feels shattered. He hasn't mentioned anything and is acting completely normal, albeit a bit hungover. I don't know what to do now. He's always had a good relationship with my sister, characterized by mutual respect. Should I disregard his drunken comments? Was it just the alcohol speaking? Should I wait for him to bring it up, though I'm not sure he even remembers what he said? What about the sex we had? Something felt different, even though I adored it and thought it was one of the best sexual experiences of my life. He was different, passionate, tender, and loving, and he kept repeating, "I love you. You are brilliant." My sister has always been modest and a bit of a tomboy, but she's lost 25 kilograms and has been working out for a year. Yesterday, she wore a form-fitting red dress with red lipstick. She looked stunning, and we all complimented her on it. She was very happy about it. I'm not sure why I included this, but I thought it might be relevant. Definitely bring this up once he's no longer hungover and can think clearly. I'm torn on whether I believe the old saying, "Drunk mind speaks sober thoughts," because I do think alcohol inhibits clear thinking and decision-making. However, I also question whether alcohol alone can make someone's husband confess to being in love with her sister. Do you think you'll be able to move past this, regardless of how much he denies those feelings are true? Because I suspect he will deny it. If it were me, I'd never feel comfortable with my husband and my sister in the same room again, which isn't sustainable for a marriage. I think he was probably expressing his desire for your sister in that moment, to be completely honest. I know that for many people, when their inhibitions are lowered and they're in an intoxicated state, those two emotions can blend. Many will tend to express their lust for someone as love for that reason. Nevertheless, you need to have a serious heart-to-heart with your significant other. No one can answer for him, and even with a conversation, it could be incredibly difficult for you to move forward in the relationship from here. I know from experience that even if this is dismissed as lust, you may carry this experience with you like a shadow. If you both want to try to make this work, I highly suggest couples counseling and individual therapy to help you both progress healthily. I wish you nothing but the best and hope for a brighter future ahead. I'm so sorry this is happening to you. My ex once told me, "I love you, my twin sister's name," and I said, "That's my twin sister, not me." He was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I got the names mixed up." He didn't. He was in love with my sister. He was dating me to get to my sister. This is definitely something you need to discuss bluntly with him. Wasn't dating you the most ridiculous move if he wanted your sister? No sister would accept her. Sister's ex. That's what I thought too, and then she dated him after I did. We were raised in a traumatic household and didn't have the best dynamic between us, as we were often compared and pitted against each other by our parents. But I do agree that 90% of the time, that's the worst way to go about it. A much better approach would be to become friends with their siblings instead of getting involved with them, but I guess he wasn't thinking clearly. This is so painful to read. You absolutely have to have that discussion today. He's acting like nothing happened. Do you think he doesn't remember saying it? I agree. Drunken words often reveal sober thoughts. Have you ever noticed any behavior towards her that gave you pause? Ask him directly, face to face. His reaction will tell you a lot. He always liked my sister. He likes my whole family and is friends with my brothers. But my sister is the one he likes the most, and we're very close with her and her husband. We do most things together that aren't just the two of us. But my sister has always been my best friend, so it was normal. If he had only said, "I love her," it could well be a drunken utterance, him genuinely liking her as a person and expressing it like that. At worst, an innocent crush, but nothing more. But he continued, ensuring he left no doubt about his feelings. What he said wasn't silly drunken words. It was an articulate thought with a lot of underlying emotion, and it emerged because his guard was down. People say a lot of foolish things while drunk, but typically, people don't profess their love for someone in this manner without it having some underlying relevance. I would definitely bring it up abruptly and observe his reaction. That should tell you everything you need to know. Update. The rules for updates here require 3 days, which is why I didn't update on Sunday when I spoke to my husband. Also, because I'm very conflicted. I talked to my husband. He said he didn't remember much about that night, especially after my sister and her husband left and we continued drinking. I told him what he said, and he didn't look shocked or surprised, just that he didn't remember saying anything. I asked him if he felt it before we started drinking. He said he always loved my sister because she is kind and warm. Then he said he thought she looked very beautiful, and perhaps his drunken self thought she was attractive. He said it's normal for people to be curious about the opposite sex. He added that he always thought she was beautiful because my entire family is good looking, but her weight loss gave her confidence, and she looked happy, and he was happy for her. I asked him if he could choose between us, and he was shocked, stating that I was his wife and the mother of his children, and he loved me. So, I asked him if he had just met us, if I wasn't his wife or anything, and my sister wasn't married. He said this was becoming ridiculous, and he disliked playing hypothetical games because people get agitated and fight about things that aren't real. After dinner, he said he loved me very much and was happy, and I shouldn't overthink what he said when he was too drunk to even know who or where he was. I'm just not sure. I keep thinking about you in this situation. I've read your comments. I hope you will see a therapist alone too. It would torment me how much influence maintaining continued access to her, however limited, played a part in his decision to stay with you, and my brain would never, ever be able to reconcile knowing how he would make love to her and that he used your body as a surrogate for his passion for your sister. Those last two thoughts would replay endlessly in my mind. Even contemplating getting to a place of trying to share intimacy with him, my brain would never reach a point where I could surrender to the moment and feel the connection. I'd be comparing. I'd be trapped in my head, overthinking every action and reaction. I'd be disengaged and self-conscious, always finding myself lacking. My ADHD and my brain would never be able to believe it wasn't just a performance. I'm very close to my sister, and we even live within 2 minutes of each other. Don't think I haven't considered that he probably accepted the next best thing of being family/friends with her. I'm obsessing over every interaction and every time he mentions her, etc. It's never in a negative way. He's always happy when talking to or about her. Is he the same about me? I don't know. Is this true? Or am I imagining things now? I don't know. Oh, therapy. No coming back from this. It's always going to be in the back of your mind. Be strong and trust your instincts. He does. He has confessed for me now. He has had feelings for my sister for some years now. But he said he loves me and our life together. We are going to start counseling, and from now on, when I spend time with my sister, he won't be there. He said he's in love with her. He said it has come and gone throughout the years. He never wanted to act on them in the past, and never will.